He was born into wealth, raised in privilege, and educated in the sacred heart of the Islamic world. But somewhere along the way, he turned his back on it all. A quiet, devout child became the most hunted man on earth. A radical idea became a global firestorm. This is not just the story of Osama bin Laden. It's the story of how one man's vision of war reshaped an entire century, and how the echoes of a single morning in 2001 still shape the world we live in today. Osama bin Mohammed bin Awad bin Laden was born in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia on March 10, 1957. He was the 17th of more than 50 children born to Mohammed bin Laden, a Yemeni immigrant who had arrived in Saudi Arabia penniless and went on to build the Bin Laden Group, one of the most powerful construction conglomerates in the Middle East. Mohammed bin Laden earned favor with the Saudi royal family, securing lucrative government contracts to renovate Islamic holy sites in Mecca and Medina. By the time Osama was born, the family was immensely wealthy and politically well-connected, part of the rising Saudi elite. Despite this privileged background, Osama was raised with conservative religious values. His mother, Aliyah Ghanem, was of Syrian descent and reportedly doted on him, even as he was sent to elite private schools. From a young age, Osama was quiet, polite, and deeply religious. In his teens, bin Laden developed a fascination with Islamic history, the Quran, and stories of warriors from early Islamic conquests. He was influenced by Wahhabi Islam, the ultra-conservative religious doctrine dominant in Saudi Arabia. In the late 1970s, bin Laden enrolled at King Abdulaziz University in Jeddah. While officially studying business administration and economics, he was far more drawn to religion and politics. There, he came under the influence of radical Islamist scholars such as Abdullah Azzam, a Palestinian cleric and one of the ideological founders of global jihad. Azzam preached that jihad was a personal duty for all Muslims, not just a spiritual struggle, but an armed one, if necessary, to defend Islam against foreign powers. Osama absorbed these teachings with intensity. He surrounded himself with like-minded students, spent hours in study circles, and became convinced that Islam was under siege, not just by the West, but by secular Arab regimes and modernity itself. Then, in 1979, everything changed. The Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, triggering a wave of outrage across the Muslim world. To bin Laden, this was a call to arms, his opportunity to live out the jihad he had long idealized. It was the beginning of a transformation from privileged Saudi heir to militant holy warrior. When the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in December 1979, it was a pivotal moment for the Muslim world and for Osama bin Laden personally. The invasion was seen by many as a direct assault on Islam. The call for jihad, or holy struggle, echoed across mosques and seminaries. Bin Laden, still in his early 20s, was stirred by both religious conviction and a sense of destiny. He left the comfort of Saudi Arabia and traveled to Pakistan, where the resistance effort was gathering. From there, he crossed into Afghanistan and joined the Mujahideen, a loose coalition of Afghan fighters waging guerrilla war against the Soviet occupiers. Unlike most foreign volunteers, bin Laden didn't just fight, he built. He used his wealth and connections to fund training camps, build roads and supply weapons. He constructed a series of cave complexes and tunnels in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan. These efforts earned him respect, not only for his ideology, but for his logistical capabilities. During this time, he deepened his ties with Abdullah Azzam, his former mentor, and with Egyptian jihadists like Ayman al-Zawahiri, who introduced him to a more ruthless form of militant Islam, rooted in the belief that even Muslim governments could be enemies if they didn't enforce strict Sharia law. In 1984, bin Laden and Azam founded the Maktab al-Khidamat, MAK, a recruitment and fundraising organization that brought foreign fighters to the Afghan battlefield. It was based in Peshawar, Pakistan, and would later evolve into something far more dangerous. By 1988, as the Soviets were preparing to withdraw, bin Laden took a decisive step. He formed a new group, al-Qaeda, meaning the base. The idea was to preserve the global network of fighters he had helped assemble and to turn their attention beyond Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda was never just an army. It was a vision of permanent jihad without borders or armies, where decentralized cells could strike enemies of Islam anywhere in the world. The Soviet withdrawal in 1989 was, to bin Laden, proof that holy war could defeat a superpower. But his next target would not be the Soviet Union. It would be the nation he once called an ally, the United States of America. With the Soviet Union defeated in Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden returned to Saudi Arabia, a celebrated figure among Islamist circles. But he was not satisfied. In his view, the war against the Soviets had only been the beginning. The greater threat to Islam, he believed, came not from communism, but from Western influence, secularism, and especially America's presence in the Muslim world. That belief crystallized during the Gulf War of 1990-1991. When Iraq invaded Kuwait, Saudi Arabia invited American troops onto its soil to protect the kingdom. For bin Laden, this was nothing less than a betrayal. He saw it as a desecration of the holy land of Islam, where the Prophet Muhammad had lived and preached. Bin Laden offered the Saudi government his own fighters, veterans of the Afghan jihad, to defend the kingdom. But he was rejected. The Saudis chose the US military instead. Humiliated and enraged, bin Laden's public criticism of the royal family led to his exile. In 1991, he left Saudi Arabia and eventually settled in Sudan, which was then governed by an Islamist regime. There, in the shadows, he began to develop al-Qaeda into a transnational terrorist organization. He provided logistical and financial support to extremist groups across the Middle East, North Africa, and Central Asia. His ideology, now fully radicalized, evolved into a blend of pan-Islamism, anti-imperialism, and violent jihad. Bin Laden was no longer focused on regional struggles. He had adopted a global agenda to rid Muslim lands of Western military and political influence, and to overthrow governments he deemed apostate. In 1996, after US pressure forced him out of Sudan, bin Laden fled to Afghanistan, where he found refuge with the Taliban. From a mountainous base near Kandahar, he issued his infamous fatwa, titled Declaration of War Against the Americans Occupying the Land of the Two Holy Places. Then in 1998, he co-signed another declaration with Ayman al-Zawahiri, stating that killing Americans and their allies, civilian and military, was a religious duty. Al-Qaeda soon began executing this vision. That same year, it orchestrated the bombings of US embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, killing over 200 people. In 2000, the group attacked the USS Cole, a Navy destroyer docked in Yemen, killing 17 sailors. But these were only preludes. Bin Laden was planning something far more devastating, a blow that would draw the US into a global conflict and elevate his vision of jihad onto the world stage. In the late 1990s, Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda had made their intentions clear. They sought to strike the United States, not just abroad, but at home. Their goal was not merely destruction, but provocation. Bin Laden wanted to draw the United States into a long, exhausting war in the Muslim world, believing it would expose what he saw as America's weakness and hypocrisy. Over several years, al-Qaeda meticulously planned an attack that would change the course of history, Operatives were selected and trained in Afghanistan, funded through a network of charities, businesses, and shadow donors. By early 2000, the key hijackers had entered the United States, blending into American cities, taking flying lessons and plotting quietly. Then, on the morning of September 11, 2001, the world watched in horror. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. At 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 hit the South Tower. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. And at 10:03 a.m., United Flight 93 went down in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Its passengers, having learned of the other attacks, fought back and stopped the hijackers from reaching their target. Believed to be either the White House or the U.S. Capitol, nearly 3,000 people were killed in the deadliest terrorist attack in human history. The images of the Twin Towers collapsing, of New Yorkers covered in ash, and of desperate people jumping from burning skyscrapers became etched into global memory. The attack was not just a tragedy, it was a strategic earthquake. It shattered the illusion of American security and redefined global politics overnight. Within days, the United States identified al-Qaeda as the perpetrator. President George W. Bush declared a war on terror. On October 7, 2001, the U.S. launched Operation Enduring Freedom, invading Afghanistan to remove the Taliban from power and destroy al-Qaeda's base of operations. Bin Laden, who had personally orchestrated and approved the 9/11 plot, went into hiding in the rugged terrain of eastern Afghanistan. He escaped U.S. forces at the Battle of Tora Bora in December 2001, vanishing into legend. For the next decade, his name would symbolize terrorism itself. He became the face of a new kind of warfare, asymmetric, ideological, and global. But Bin Laden's war had also ignited something else, a massive and unrelenting response, a war that would span continents, claim hundreds of thousands of lives, and reshape the 21st century. After the dust of 9/11 settled, the US launched a massive global manhunt. The objective was clear: capture or kill Osama bin Laden. Intelligence agencies across the world were mobilized. Satellites scanned the mountains of Afghanistan. Drones buzzed over remote villages in Pakistan. Interrogations, informants, and wiretaps built a fragmented trail. Yet for nearly a decade, bin Laden remained a ghost. His voice would surface in audio and video messages, taunting the West and inspiring extremists, but his location remained unknown. Many believed he was hiding in the remote tribal regions along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. Few suspected he was actually living in plain sight, deep inside Pakistan itself. Then, in August 2010, the CIA tracked a man known only as the Courier, a trusted aide to bin Laden. After months of surveillance, the agency was led to an unusual compound in Abbottabad, a quiet military town not far from Islamabad. The residence was striking, surrounded by high walls, barbed wire, and lacking phone or internet connections. Bin Laden's presence couldn't be confirmed, but the circumstantial evidence was compelling. After months of deliberation, President Barack Obama gave the order. On the night of May 1, 2011, U.S. Navy SEALs from SEAL Team 6 boarded stealth helicopters and entered Pakistani airspace. Their target, the Abbottabad compound. The mission, codenamed Operation Neptune Spear, lasted roughly 40 minutes. Inside the compound, they encountered resistance. In a brief but violent confrontation, Osama bin Laden was shot and killed. His body was identified using facial recognition and DNA testing. Within hours, his death was confirmed. He was buried at sea to prevent his grave from becoming a shrine. The Sahel news sparked celebration in the United States and solemn reflection around the world. But the end of bin Laden did not end the war he helped ignite. Al-Qaeda splintered into new factions. Extremism evolved, giving rise to groups like ISIS. The war on terror continued, its cost measured not only in dollars, but in lives, trust, and geopolitics. Still, the man who had reshaped the 21st century, who had dragged the world into an era of fear, surveillance, and unending conflict, was gone. Osama bin Laden died in 2011, but his legacy did not end with his death. In many ways, the world we live in today was shaped by the decisions made in response to his actions. The war on terror he provoked became the longest conflict in American history. The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, launched to dismantle terrorist networks and prevent future attacks, lasted decades, cost trillions of dollars, and claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, both military and civilian. In the name of security, countries around the world expanded surveillance powers, introduced anti-terror laws, and transformed airport security. Terms like rendition, black sites, and enhanced interrogation entered the public lexicon. Bin Laden's ideology did not die, with him either. Though Al-Qaeda was weakened, it inspired a new generation of jihadist groups, more decentralized, more brutal. The most infamous was ISIS, which seized territory in Iraq and Syria and declared a caliphate in 2014. Ironically, many analysts argue that the US invasion of Iraq, justified in part by fears of terrorism, helped create the very chaos in which ISIS was born. Bin Laden's strategy had always been to provoke, to drag the United States into a costly war, to inflame Muslim resentment, and to frame the conflict as Islam versus the West. In that sense, his actions succeeded far beyond the battlefield. But history is not only measured by what someone destroys, it's measured by what is built in response. In the years since 9/11, many Muslim voices around the world have spoken out, denouncing extremism and reclaiming the meaning of their faith. Communities scarred by violence have rebuilt. New leaders and movements have emerged, calling for dialogue instead of war. And for many, the lesson of bin Laden's life is clear: that ideology, left unchecked, can be more dangerous than any weapon. His story is not just about terrorism. It's about how the world responds to fear, how societies can be reshaped in moments of crisis, and how history is not just written by leaders or armies, but by the consequences of their ideas. Osama bin Laden did not shape the world by creating. He shaped it by what he destroyed. His legacy is not one of leadership, but of chaos. A grim reminder that an idea, even a dangerous one, can echo across borders and generations. And yet, history is not fixed. It is written, challenged, and remembered by voices like yours. This is History of the Word, where we uncover the stories that still shape our present. If this story moved you, taught you, or made you think, like, comment, and subscribe, and join us next time as we journey through another remarkable moment in human history.